My name is Christian Basil. Years ago, I had an idea. I got myself a TARDIS. Took it to new places, met a lot of new people, took some great pictures, and talked Doctor Who. From Krypton Radio and the creators of the Hanging With web show, this is the legend of the traveling TARDIS. Join me on my latest adventures and become part of the legend. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another wonderful, fantastic, and toyish. Is that even a word? Toyish, toy episode. Because that's the subject of today. We're going to be talking about toys, boys and girls with their toys. Welcome to the Legend of the Traveling TARDIS radio show. My name is Christian Basil. I'm the host and the driver of this machine that we take off every week. And I can't do this alone. I don't like doing this alone because otherwise you're just going to hear me mumble for an hour and people get bored real easily there. So I have my good friend, and we are entering into the month of October, and Mark has some ideas of how we're going to be very spookified. Mr. Mark Muncy of Erie, Florida. How we're going to be spookified I'm just making up words, aren't I?
Hey, I like the words you come up with.
All words are made up.
Spookified?
All words are made up.
Dictionary. Google it. Just Google it. As the doctor tells you to Google it. Yeah. So, yes, author Mark Muncy with Erie, Florida. Got to check out his book as we're coming up there. You're going to be are you at Spooky this year?
Of course. Yeah, I'm part of the creators track at Spooky.
Wow.
We'll be doing several panels over the weekend, and we'll also have our booth there with our brand new book, Creepy Florida, which comes out September 30th. So nice. The third in the series. So I keep thinking I'm going to pull a Douglas Adams and have a fourth in our trilogy, but we'll see how it goes.
Right, and you're going to be there. You're going to be there from. Actually, this is a very interesting weekend. It's going to be October 31st, Halloween night, until November 2nd, which is, I think, it just crawls right into it. But then again, Disney and Universal started their nights in August, so
yeah. You get a few extra days of Halloween this way. You get to live a little longer. And the main guests are Bruce Campbell, Sam Raimi, Ted Raimi, Elvira, Clive Barker, Alice Cooper. I mean, that's just off the top of my head. There's Todd and some classic monsters and heroes and villains. So that's that. So you got the celeb list covered. It's the dark side of Comic-Con, basically. It's all the horror and
but it's the fun side of dark Comic-Con.
Oh yeah, we got
horror and blood and gore.
And horror authors galore. We got locals. We got nationals. We got Al Goingback. We got Jonathan Mayberry, whose book series, V Wars, is just coming out on Netflix. So, like I said, Clive Barker. Some you get the whole gamut. So it's pretty cool to be lumped in with those guys.
And I just want to let people know who may not be familiar with Spooky Empire. It is the pinnacle convention for horror in the Southeast in Florida. And this year they've gone and went to Tampa, which I'm kind of selfish about. Not only that, they're bringing in really hard hitters, Bruce Campbell, Elvira. I'm like, So if you guys are into that spooky stuff, which we're actually going to be doing for the Traveling TARDIS all month of October, starting October 1st, you're going to see a lot of good horror stuff starting in there, some fun stuff too. But I digress. I'm just really rambling on over here. The showrunner that I'm going to be turning over to in just a moment to talk about the toys is none other than artist Melanie Dean. How you doing, Melanie? Welcome.
Hello. Hello, everyone, naturally. But I'm so happy that we're going to be talking about toys today. It's like one of my favorite little collectible-y kind of things. People collect art. People collect cars. I collect toys. And we get to talk about that.
Yes. Okay, I didn't know where to go with that.
I didn't know where else you were going to go. I'm thinking you were just doing.
There's absolutely no segue over here. It's like,
okay, so the segue should be then. In that case, we should toss over to Who Knew News.
Oh, there we go. Yes, and they're back. The Hanging With web show team. They're back with us today with this episode. And Sage is back. We got Garrett, Dina, Cosplay Michael, which came up. Actually, I'm going to say, Garrett, I actually enjoyed this. I don't know if you saw this. I'm sorry, I'm rambling off over here. Cosplay Michael's interview with CF News 13 showed up in my memory feed today, and Jake was sharing it all over the place. If you haven't seen it, come to my personal page, you'll see it. And Cosplay Michael was the pinnacle, the catalyst of this particular episode, and with Allison Walker Torres, now at that time was Allison Walker, but Cosplay Michael was geeking out the whole time. What did you think when he was being interviewed the whole time there?
I actually, honestly, it was so much fun to watch that happen. He got dressed that day specifically for the news. We were promoting Space Coast Comic-Con, and he got dressed that day, and he was very excited. He got down there, and at first he was really nervous. All he saw was Allison and the camera crew, and then the other cosplayers started to get there, and he just kind of got his Cosplay Michael on, and he had such a great time, and I just kind of stood there laughing and enjoying him. I mean, Michael, if anything, loves the spotlight, and it is a lot of fun to watch him enjoy it and soak it in. And I'll never forget. He told him Allison asked him why he liked cosplay. He said, "Well, it's my job."
Yeah, something about my parents make me do it, or something like
said,
that.
Yeah. He said, "Well, it's my job," and she said, "Well, who do you work for?" And he said, "Oh, my
parents."
And it was just hilarious, and we had a great time watching him, and it's always fun to watch Michael do his thing when he's out in public. So that was fun.
So everybody, if you get a chance, go over to Facebook. When you get a chance during this episode, whenever after this episode, please check out Cosplay Michael. Give him a like from all of us. Give him some love. You're going to enjoy every picture that he's taken himself. He's been the Joker. He's been Captain Maul from Firefly, and I'm trying to think of some others, but my brain has completely fried.
I like him as Thor from Ragnarok.
There you go, Thor from Ragnarok.
His Thor Ragnarok is actually pretty cool. And his most recent one is he just did a Robin, the Tim Drake Robin.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. He did that for Dragon Con, so that was a lot of fun.
Speaking of Cosplay Michael, which has absolutely no segue, Sage, bring on the news.
Okay, well, first up in the news, if anybody has not heard, Freema Agumon is going to be back in action in the Whoniverse. Not for Doctor Who itself, but Martha Jones is going to make a return. They're going to do Torchwood Dissected for Big Finish. It will also star Eve Miles as Gwen Cooper, so yay, reunions for everybody. And Big Finish has that in production, and that is going to be available February of 2020. So we have that to look forward to. That will be lots of fun.
I loved how they used their Twitter feed just to kind of do a teaser of it, and they just had the silhouette of the Nightingale. So everyone was kind of going, who is it going to be? What is this? What is this? And they figured, Martha! It's Martha!
Yeah, that was good.
I found another interesting piece of news. Mm-hmm. In East Lansing, Michigan, there's a place called Punks with Lunch. And it just opened. It's a very unusual food pantry. It does books and stuff and food, but out front is a large vertical blue cabinet. Can anybody guess what that is?
I can't imagine.
It's the TARDIS. So, and but outside in the cabinet, they have non-perishable food items, and it is available as their food pantry.
Wow.
Right in Michigan, which I thought was just a fabulous idea.
The pantry's bigger than inside, we hope.
A lot of people are doing different either libraries or blessing boxes or other kind of things. So it's kind of cool that their pantry that's right there. It's a TARDIS. That's awesome.
It is. And so anybody who wants to make a donation in Michigan to the TARDIS food pantry, they just ask that you go ahead and take a photo op. So we'll have to keep our eye out for those and see what that is. So I thought that was really cool.
Oh.
And then I have some other fun news because Melanie is going to be talking all about toys and collectibles. As everybody knows, New York Comic Con is right around the corner.
Yes.
They've announced their new Funko Pops that are going to be coming out just for New York Comic Con, and Doctor Who has one in there. And it is a Zim Shah pop. Has anybody seen that yet?
Tim Shaw.
Tim Shaw.
Yeah.
Teeth Boy.
I haven't seen it. Wait,
I haven't seen the pop. I'll have to look that one up.
The internet.
It is really cool. It looks, when I first looked at it, I was like, what are all those little pieces of paper? And then as I look closer, obviously I can see what it is now. So, but that's fun. And then there is another one. One of the brand new toys is a 13th Doctor action figure that has just come out. So that's pretty cool.
Very nice.
So wait till you see that. And of course, the New York Toy Fair is the one who had that. So there is a jacketless figure also. So you can have. Oh, wow. I don't know. It doesn't say whether the jacket comes off, because everybody I know who has, figurines and stuff likes to take all their clothes off. I don't know why that should be so. But it is. It's a thing. Whatever.
And you had to say it, didn't you?
I did. Well, that's what happens. So, we like Barbies and we like bake things. And this isn't actual new news. This is old news. But I wanted to ask Melanie, because she has different items in her collection. For the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who, they had put out a TARDIS cupcake kit.
Are you kidding me?
Has anybody ever seen that? Yes. And you can make little Dalek mold cupcakes.
Oh, I wonder if you're baking the cupcake itself to look like it, or if maybe you're doing a chocolate mold to make it on top. While I'm on the internet, now I need to search something else.
That's exactly right. So that is all of the Who Knew News for today. Take it away, Melanie.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Actually, Melanie, I'm going to just add this to the Who Knew News real fast. We haven't announced it yet, but we want to let people know there will be the Legend of the Traveling TARDIS.com, and all the news that you're going to be hearing from Sage. If you miss it, or if you're going like, well, I want more information about it, all this information will be at the Legend of the Traveling TARDIS.com. It's going to be making its premiere in October. Speaking of Mark Muncy and working with little Terra things out there, but we're going to be premiering it. We're just still in its beta phase. So if you want to visit just to check it out, give some talk about it, or just sign up for your favorite podcast in all of its genre, because you can actually get links to iTunes, iHeart, radio.com, CBSRadio.com. You can actually visit our site. We're still working on it, and we are hoping to have it premiere in October. So that's part of the Who Knew News there. Check it out for yourself. Now, we'll turn it over to Melanie and all of her toys.
Well, a little birdie told me that we're almost up to a commercial break, unfortunately. So I was thinking maybe we could quickly note the poll question, and on the way back, on the other end of the poll question, have people kind of think about what their answer is. So, Christian, what was the poll that you put up?
The poll that we have up this week, Melanie, is, and it's slightly generic, but do you own a Doctor Who toy? Just plain and simple. And we do have 175 people who voted so far. Over 24 comments. Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah, so we got a lot of people chattering about this, a lot of people voting about it. And the funny part about it is I just premiered it the moment before this show, so a lot of people are talking toys today, but 175 people have voted. So
okay.
Back.
Yeah, so while the three of us kind of mull over, well, at least me and Mark trying to make our best guess for what it is, we're going to go to a quick commercial, and have you guys can use that time as well to think how many people said yes and how many people said no when we get back from our little break.
See Giltinan's Highland Solution on Amazon.com. Niall McGeehan needs the Lady Catherine Ruthven's dowry to relieve his client's crushing debt, but has no intention of giving her his heart. With the husband who does not want to be married and believes all women are deceitful, Lady Catherine must forfeit everything into the bargain. Can Catherine mend Niall's cynical heart before the treachery of others destroys them both? Highland Solution by best-selling author C.C. Giltinan, available on Amazon.com. Famous Faces and Funnies in Melbourne, Florida is leading the way in pop culture fun. From comic books and graphic novels to Funko Pops and collector's items, Famous Faces and Funnies has it all. Rick Shea and the professional team at Famous Faces and Funnies are friendly and knowledgeable. Whether you're looking for toys, props, collector treasures, or a new comic book, Famous Faces and Funnies is your one-stop shop. To find Famous Faces and Funnies on Facebook and Twitter, just type at FFF Comics.
This is Cosplay Michael with the Hanging with Love show. I want to tell you about my friends at Embellis Effects in Orlando, Florida. They've got makeup, costumes, and props for all of your costume needs. And the team at Embellis Effects is helpful and friendly. Embellis Effects is one of my favorite places, and I know it will be yours too. I'll see you there. Or go to embelliseffects.com. And remember, cosplay is for everyone.
Okay, we are back from commercial break. It is us from The Legend of the Traveling TARDIS. Right now, I'm kind of piloting as the host. This is Melanie Dean. I'm here with your typical host, Christian Basil, and fantastic author extraordinaire, Mark Muncy. We were just talking about...
I'm a typical host. Yeah.
Oh, good Lord. So we were just talking about how, before we went to the break, that we did a poll on do you own a Doctor Who toy? Since Christian is the keeper of this information, I believe it's 174 people have voted so far?
175 people have voted.
175? Okay, so my best guess of all, I'll give you the percentage. I think that about 93% of the people who answered said yes, they own a toy. How about you, Mark? What do you think?
I originally was going to go higher, but then I remembered how hard it was to get Doctor Who toys until New Who. And even then, it was years before they started showing up. I think it was well into the Tenet era before we started getting them stateside at all. So unless you went to a specific, collector's store or something like that. So I'm going to say it's a little lower than I originally was guessing, even with them ubiquitous everywhere from keychains to to everything. So I'm still going to say it's probably around, I'll say 60-70%.
Okay. So Christian, what is it?
What? Actually, you know what? Let's get the Hanging With team. Let's see what they think is, what kind of percentage do you think of the people who responded, the 775, how many percentage do you think own a Doctor Who toy?
80%.
80%? Oh, okay, so you're going to drop it a little lower. Okay. Well,
I'm going to go with about 85% because 85%. It's the. I mean, he did the poll on the Legend of the Traveling TARDIS page.
Well,
what are
that's
you
a good
doing
point.
here, people?
What do you mean?
I mean, come on.
That's an excellent
What are
point.
you doing here?
What are you doing here, people? I mean, I'm going to go with 85.
Hey, to be fair, it's a free podcast. And some of
That's
these people
valid.
are,
That is valid. They could, people just could be killing time here.
Empire and order books. So
And it is own a toy, not necessarily buy a toy. People get
That's
gifts.
true. It is. They already have to have it, so they own it. So I'm going to 85. I'm going to go with 85.
Okay. Well, just like the Price is Right, ding, 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 one of you has hit the number head on. One of you has hit 85% of the 175 people own a Doctor Who toy.
Of course, it's award-winning author and journalist G.W. Punisher who gives the absolute correct answer.
Send checks. Send checks to the Hanging With Web show. That's all good.
Give me a little bit loving there. So yes, 85%.
Any good comments within the poll?
This is actually, I just had posted it this morning, so I hadn't even had a chance to read the comments. But one person, and this is an interesting question. I'm going to say no, just because it's not the case. But our friend Sherry Reardon asked if cosplay stuff, does that count as toys? I'm going to say no because it's
yeah.
Well, I'm going to go. Yeah. I don't know because me and Mark, as we both hold up our sonic screwdrivers in solidarity, because technically these are marketed as toys.
Yeah, the Vortex Manipulator was a toy. The fob watches came out as a toy.
Okay, so
because Underground Toys were the ones
not exactly
put those out.
You
costumes, but like I've got a Doctor Who bathrobe. Does that count?
That'll be the next show when we talk about textiles.
That's going to be the.
It'll be all the T-shirts.
Got a lot of beach towels too that are TARDISes. So.
What's funny is not that people had responded per se, but it's people took pictures. So if you want to see everybody's inventory of toys that they have, they put. There's a gentleman by the name of Rory Stocky just said too many. A lot of people were just giving some, but people were taking pictures and putting their toys
up
online. So
we were just I was just joking with Melanie that between the three of us, we could probably make up for that other 15%. Just with some loose or doubles or something. So.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna give a shout out to one person who posted a picture. If you get a chance, there is an Andrea Mettenborg, and she put a question mark against one. She took a whole picture. It is practically every Fourth Doctor action figure that could be humanly possibly purchased. She includes old time, new time, different types of scarves. She even puts them in order. I'm counting this one. Yeah, she's putting oh no, I don't think she has Curator, but she has from her Fleetwood generation, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 Fourth Doctors.
Wow.
I would have that many Brigadiers if they made them, but I only have the one.
That is awesome. So that's the thing about all the toys is that to Mark's point, a lot of toys, and it wasn't until New Who that, at least again, combined until New Who, and we're talking stateside here, that you could even see when all these different toys and them coming out, that you saw them in your comic book shops, that you saw them at that point. Here's a little bit of a dating. Movie Stop, GameStop, all those kind of places where they started having even Think Geek and being in the mall. I know, right? Well, honestly, with Movie Stop, when they were closing, they were shuttering their doors. I know just before they did that, they had gone into they sectioned their stores off where they had their movies, and then they had all the movie and fandom paraphernalia. So stuff that you could also typically see maybe in a Hot Topic now has a little bit of that. GameStop has a little bit of that. Think Geek has really shown off that, that their stores do have that. Unfortunately, I think some of their stores are now in that closing round too. But a lot of Movie Stop, when they were closing down and they were doing their clearances, a lot of my toys came from there. That's where the Curator, the 5.5-inch figure came from. I'm like staring at this pack that what my husband bought, and it was of 1 through 11, and it was all the 5.5-inch figures again, and underneath them are each one of their little Titan figure counterparts. But so as you can see, we're going to start talking a little bit more into toys and everything. But before I start just rambling on, because like Christian, I could take this whole toy thing and talk just an hour about toys and whatnot, and I'm sure Mark could do 2 hours. Yeah. I'm going to quickly ask everyone, do you have a favorite Doctor Who toy? Okay. Can you even say, okay, if someone just said, I'm not going to say favorite, because sometimes if you had to say favorite and go, oh, okay, I have to pick one. Wait, what do you need? One? Let's say that it's Skype, and surprise, that's what we're doing. And let's say it's show and tell time, and you need to bring one toy and show it in your classroom. Show and tell. What are you bringing? What are you showing off to your friends?
I gotta go with my classic. This is I was showing it off a little earlier. This is the original resin Fourth Doctor screwdriver. You could not buy. There were no toys. Certainly nothing made noise or did flashing lights or anything. Back in this will date it to the early to mid 80s. And I had to get this from an aunt who was visiting England, and she picked it up, and this was the only toy that she could get at the time. Now, they had just started doing the figures, I think about a year after that. But this was the only way to get it, and I got a resin one of this and a resin Lala Ward Romana screwdriver, and they are as sonic as the other Doctor's sonic was, where you can tap a microphone, tap a microphone with it, because it does nothing else. But had to paint it myself, so I think it's just silver paint that I had for my Dungeons and Dragons miniatures in the day, and because it was just brown otherwise.
Yeah.
And I made her Romana is just one color gold. I could do more with it. I could make it detailed. I could put the red tip and all that. No, it's perfect the way it is for me. That's my favorite toy.
How about you, Christian? Do you have one that you would be bringing to show and tell? It's like, here's my favorite, one of my favorite Doctor Who toys.
Well, I don't want to say I hate this. I think people would probably already know, if you consider it the toy, the traveling TARDIS itself, because technically that is a toy, or was a toy before it became the icon now that it is over there. But as funny as it sounds, the toy that I actually would have loved to put to show and tell, if it had worked, is what I think it's called the TARDIS helicopter, the TARDIS copter.
Wait, what? Okay, I'm perplexed, but Mark
hang on one second.
His hand, because he knows this.
Keep talking. I'm going to bring it to. Hang on, we're going to bring it up. I'll show you guys. Hang on.
Okay.
Yeah,
so and one thing I wanted to just kind of point out is when I say toy, I do mean collectively toys and figures and action figures and in-action figures, because toys in, let's say, toys in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, every decade, toys have been different. You know, they either they served a functionality, they served some type of purpose, and then slowly, like when you look into more the 80s and 90s, a lot of toys started having that in-action kind of figure. Or actually, you had an action figure, then you had an in-action figure where they just were posable and they stood there and they were like little mini works of art. A lot of that when you get into the 2000s and even now, that's when you start looking at paint applications, where even as a child you start looking at things like, was the paint application of the eyes right on, or is the tie right, or is it off, or the eyebrows weird? So I loop toys and figures kind of in the same range, at least for our purposes of our podcast. But Christian has come back and he's going to tell us more about this TARDIS helicopter.
It's called a TARDIS copter, and I'm sorry for you folks, we're actually on we're on Skype so that we can see each other's stuff. But just to give you an example, it basically is a small miniature flying TARDIS with a copter propeller on top right there. And essentially, it was given to me by a former friend out there who. The thing is, I don't know if you remember, Melanie, there was one year we went to MegaCon, and I brought that thing. And what I was doing is I actually took it and piloted it from the top row, the third floor escalator. But the problem is the copter doesn't hold a charge.
No.
Oh,
so
no.
it'll last maybe 2 to 3 minutes. And then all of a sudden, it will just start to descend slowly until it lands and, for a better term, crashes into something. And my biggest fear was, if it gets down to the first floor, I will never see it again. Somebody's going to pick it up and run with it.
Yeah.
So, I put it away. Yeah.
Although MegaCon's a pretty good crowd. We lost. My daughter wore an Osimo costume because that's her. She just puts cardboard boxes on and goes as Osimo. And from South Park, and she lost a little button she had on top of her head, and it was a special Ash versus Evil Dead button. And I thought, well, that's gone. We'll never get it back because that was a very limited thing. Sure enough, it was in Lost and Found later that day.
Oh wow!
Because fans generally tend to be nice people. So
I think for the most part they're going to be nice. I'm just saying that I'll probably have that random 5-year-old who goes, "I found this. It fell from the sky."
Well, it's interesting looking at the TARDIS copter. If you think about it, it's really just a drone, like the infancy of drones becoming a very big marketable thing, which is just so cool. But I noticed the packaging on that because as we'll talk a little bit more on the other side of the commercial break about how Underground Toys really took that license and went crazy with it. So quick commercial, and then we'll talk a little bit more about toys and figures and everything else. That's the fun things that we could play with Doctor Who when we get back.
Alien invaders enslave Earth,
unleashing hunters into the ruin wastes.
One young survivor struggles to elude their monsters, clinging to hope.
When he's stolen off the planet by a sarcastic Starship AI, they pit their uneasy alliance against a treacherous galaxy.
Explore a whole new verse of barbarism and betrayal.
Wonder and adventure.
In the Scion series.
By Michael J. Allen.
Beginning with Book 1, Scion Conquered Earth.
Available in print, ebook, and audio on Amazon.com.
The Gift, from best-selling author Cece Giltinan.
An immortal spirit offers Cassie Calloway, a modern American heiress, the opportunity to spend 60 days in another time as another person, and the free-spirited college student jumps at the chance.
In 14th century Scotland, Tavish Ranald must marry. It is his duty. Can he marry Claire Morrison when another lass holds his heart?
When Cassie awakens as Claire, her new problem is Tavish. Join Cassie and Tavish as they embark on the adventure of a lifetime.
In The Gift, best-selling author Cece Giltinan's
Pocket Watch Chronicles on Amazon.com.
Now on Amazon.com, iCoin from author Jeremy Mosby. It's an alternate reality, and the leader of the planet iCoin is none other than Benjamin Franklin. When corrupt officials threaten not only iCoin but the Earth as well, an unlikely chosen one, Jeremy, must face dark foes to save the Earth and iCoin alike. Author Jeremy Mosby takes readers on a superhero's adventure through this compelling and imaginative alternate universe. Get iCoin on Amazon.com today.
And welcome back to The Legend of the Traveling TARDIS. This is Melanie Dean. I am here with author Mark Muncy and typical, usual host, Christian Basil. I'm staring at my Skype trying to see if I can get it.
Every commercial you're going to add to that word typical, usual,
Yes.
and now we got some other word coming up. Oh, great.
I know, we only have like one more break after this, but it is what it is. So, we're talking about our favorite toys, our favorite figures, and everything else Doctor Who. We already kind of discussed Mark showing off other stuff. It's just basically a big thing of show and tell right now on our podcast. He's showing us the Fourth Doctor.
Board game.
For the board game. Okay, so we're going to have another, I believe we're going to have another part of the series where we're going to be talking about other like board games and RPG games and the VR games. And I think we're going to also do one of just the textiles, or how many robes and towels do you own, and how many t-shirts do you own? But of course I digress, as I like to do. The cool thing with Doctor Who and in the realm of toys and figures that I've seen is that once again, like what we had mentioned before, is that around the 2000s, like 2005, 2010, coinciding with New Who, is when you started seeing that the licensing was really starting to get out there with toys. And I believe that you see a lot of like the 5.5-inch figures of Doctor Who. You'll see, even if you go onto eBay and whatnot, the aftermarket, like out of box ones, like I think it's 3 3/4. They're like the smaller little figures. I mean, if you think about all the toys, think about all the different licensings. You have those two right there. You have different figures of how many different TARDISes have you seen. Heck, I think the show is basically based off of a die-cast one of that. Christian's holding up a bobblehead of one. I think everybody's just off-screen grabbing everything that they have at
TARDISes.
And there's just a different TARDIS coming up that's popping up as I'm talking. It's
Christian, I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question. The traveling TARDIS, was it in Eagle Moss, or what was it originally?
Originally, it was just a die-cast. As the legend goes, I went on Amazon, looked for a die-cast TARDIS, spent over like $75 with shipping, and it was a BBC licensed TARDIS. I don't know if they make the die-cast anymore like that.
Well, I know Eagle Moss stopped making some of them. They had the license for a long time making the die-casts, and used to get these. Yeah, this was our traveling TARDIS. This is the die-cast Eagle Moss one. Nice. And they came with a big magazine that talked all about, each specific thing. And the Eagle Moss figures, I know for a long time, were the only real collectible figure at the time. They did a series for a long time. You could get a very obscure characters and they're still current. I mean, they had Capaldi, and I know they have a Whittaker now. And I think they have a Tim Shaw. And some of the new stuff for this season, and each one still comes with that magazine, describing the character and all the things they do. And so I know a lot of collectors love the Eagle Moss stuff. And the Eagle Moss I think they started with the Star Trek series, and they used to do the ships, and then they did the characters and all that, and then they got the Doctor Who license, and they went crazy with it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's Eagle Moss. I remember it was BBC license. The thing is. The bottom fell out. I'll give you a little story that I tell people about that, because everybody's asking where's the bottom, and literally the bottom did fall out.
It got flooded out.
It got flooded out because the story goes is that there was took it to SeaWorld, and I don't know if you are familiar with the pearl diving exhibit. For those of you who are not familiar, have not seen this in the Florida, I don't know if there's anywhere else, but there is a little pool, like a little lagoon, and it's like a half cut off pool, and you can see the inside. And what it's supposed to be is the divers are supposed to dive down, pull up a pearl or oyster, and open it up, and you get a little pearl inside of it. I think that was just the novelty that was cool. Well, I asked the girl, I said, would you mind taking my TARDIS for a spin down in the water? And she did. She took it down the water. Little did I know, the TARDIS was filling up on the inside with water. So when she came up with it, it started flooding out with water, and the weight of the water actually went down and pushed the bottom out, and the bottom cannot go back on unless I either glue it or weld it. But now the bottom has become the doctor's TARDIS, meaning that I've gotten all the signatures of all the doctors. I'm trying to get all the signatures of all the doctors so that they have it. And it's only allowed for the signing. And I've hid it somewhere in this house. Now I can't find it. So I got.
Oh no!
I'm sure it's somewhere, but it's just not in plain sight. I was going to show it to you guys. But
that's my Doctor Who role playing game book. I have each of the source books signed by a different doctor. So
yeah,
and, it took me forever to get Paul McGann, and but that was cool. And then for Pertwee, I got his dad to sign. I got his son to sign it. You know, I had Sean sign it for me, and that was pretty cool. He loved it. He thought it was great. So
that's one thing I've noticed is like a lot of people will also do like with action figures and other things that are either mint on card or mint or whatever, that they'll have toys signed, and even like plushies, where I see like people carry around their favorite, 10th Doctor plushie or 4th Doctor plushie or their K9 plushie, and that's another big thing to talk about, is that when it comes to toys, it's not just the figures and everything that are resin or plastic or cast or molded. It's also there's a whole plushie, aspect of it. And it's funny. It's neat seeing how many different licenses have gone out through the BBC's blessing of think about it. There's Funko, Underground Toys, and all the way up to like Big Chief, that they just resecured their licensing to keep knocking out like their scale figures that are gigantic and all that kind of fun stuff. I think they just announced that they're going to keep going with 12. They're doing a 12th Doctor. I think that they're going to do their Pertwee. I can't remember. I remember a lot of people were asking about it. I know personally, I absolutely adore those figures. But the funny thing is, like, merchandise wise, is I know a while ago, the only time that you could ever find stuff was like on eBay, because you weren't finding stuff over here in the US. Have you guys ever like had to look on eBay or years, trying to find things that you've never, Christian, I know that's where you resorted to Amazon to find your stuff, but was there anything else that was your white whale that you were trying to find? Mark's looking at me. He's saying, I got a story.
I got a story before the license was open. In the U.S., there was one guy, I think it was one company, had the license for all Doctor Who in America. And I do not remember which company it was. And there was, we were at MegaCon that year, and this will date it. This was way, I'd say, early 90s. It was the dark years of Doctor Who.
It literally was dark with something playing.
Yeah, the wilderness years, we called them. We had a local fan group had made a T-shirt that had the scarf on it, almost in a question mark like shape, and it had almost a Tom Baker likeness on it, but it was like a caricature of him. And this guy had his lawyers going all around MegaCon, and if it was not a licensed thing that he had gotten a piece of, he was shutting it down. The lawyers were going crazy with it. Now, so that was anybody who had done fan art. Yeah, they had to take it down immediately. And this guy was, severe on it. Now, legally, I guess within his rights, but that was before fan licensing and all that was the groups could do that. Now, what happened was they went to this one local bookstore down here in St. Pete was set up at the con, and they had that T-shirt. And they were selling it, and they also had scarves that they had made. They had handmade them, and the lawyer came up to them and said, "So who is that on that shirt?" And they said, "Why, that's Che Guevara." and it's a symbol of socialism.
Wait, what? Wow.
And they were calling
and
they
political
folded the
dissidents. Thank
scarves to look like a flag, and they were trying to pass them off as the flag. And what was funny is since the lawyer really didn't know anything about Doctor Who, he let it pass and walked away. So that just shows you that the lawyers really didn't know what they were talking about. They just knew what they were supposed to look for.
Yeah.
And somebody had told them, hey, that booth's selling Doctor Who stuff. And they came over and had no idea what it was. So it was all about the money for them.
Did you have one of those shirts?
I tried
to get it
so bad. I have one somewhere, but I have no idea where it's at in my voluminous closet. So
about $500 worth right now.
But it's so funny. And but I do still have the scarf behind me that they made. And that was
cool.
my first scarf. So, but yeah, that is my story about licensing. There you go. So,
Melanie, if I can interject, I would say, and tell me if I'm wrong, and because Garrett nailed it earlier, 85%, I would say within probably back before the reboot, I would say it would be flipped. I would say people would probably have Doctor Who toys 15% and 85% didn't have any toys.
Yeah.
It was tough. And especially when I grew up, at that time, I don't know if you remember, Mark, Enterprise 1701 back in Orlando. Yeah. They had like maybe 4 or 5 items, and the cheapest item was like $70 or something like that.
I think I got all the role-playing supplements.
Yeah, well, imagine it's similar to back then the CDs, where if you wanted music, it was an import.
But it was just hard to find. It was like 5 things, and I actually broke down because it was on sale. The first cosplay I ever did in my entire life. I do have the 7th Doctor's question mark sweater. What about you, Garrett?
No, I was listening to Mark's story, and it made me curious, so I did a little search. The single most pirated Doctor Who item. Does anybody want to guess?
Ooh, pirated. I want to say the scarf. I almost want to say it's the scarf, because everyone probably finds somebody to knit them a scarf.
Yeah, no, believe it or not, the single most pirated, for profit, that is. Now, I'm sure the cosplayers have been doing scarves. The single most pirated for profit Doctor Who product were canine toys.
Oh, wow.
People were making little canines and selling them. And interestingly enough, in that search I happened to find, in tonight's topic is toys, obviously, and many toys are collectibles. The holy grail, guys, of Doctor Who toys is a luxury blue Dalek suit made by Scorpion Automotives.
Yep.
And it currently sells for $5,000.
There was a special, one of the last VHS specials I remember, where they were showing off. It was like a retrospective of Doctor Who, and I remember it was just really well done. But they had Hartnell's daughter, and she still had that costume, and she put it on her little son in that video, and had him walk around in it. And that really is amazing. And they were talking about how it was worth like 10,000 pounds then. So
right now it would fetch at least 5,000 pounds, they said. And then there are obviously other smaller toys, board games such as Dodge the Daleks is one of them. The Great Escape is up to 400 pounds in good condition for that Dodge the Daleks board game.
So my game of Time and Space I know is worth quite a bit. So that was
like all toys, as toys age, they get to be worth something. It's really interesting to see how Doctor Who toys, because they were so rare back in the day, have become so valued by collectors today.
Oh wow, it's funny because there's a lot of toys out there that's one thing that you want to think about the collectability of it. Is a lot of people who purchase toys now kind of think, someday this is going to be worth a lot of money, and it's just one of those things where do you just sit on it and hold on it, or do you sit there and enjoy it? We'll talk more about that aspect when we get back from the commercial break. Thanks for listening in right now, and keep holding through, and we're going to talk a little bit more toys on the way on the other side. So hold tight, and we'll be right back.
At Xavier'sManifestThyWill.com. Do you crave solutions to your everyday problems? Get rich, find love, and become happy. Xavier, Master of the Dark Arts, may have the powers you need to prevail. Don't give up because other spellcasters have failed you. At Xavier'sManifestThyWill.com. Life does not have to be as hard as you see it. Xavier, an astrologist and psychic, carries out rituals and casts spells conscientiously, and he has the power to prevail in situations deemed impossible by other spellcasters. At ManifestThyWill.com, see for yourself the difference real magic can make. Go to ManifestThyWill.com today.
The Planetary Alliance has fallen, replaced by the conglomerate.
Governed by the universe's most powerful corporation.
One planet stands alone.
Earth.
Captain Reginald Epsilon and his ship, the Stingray.
A new prototype warship that took a decade of research and development refused to recognize his new commander.
And he disappeared in the blink of an eye.
An all-out
manhunt for Epsilon and the Stingray was on. The ruthless Admiral Roth uses Epsilon's executive officer, the stunning Lieutenant Jesse Smythe.
And her little sister Maggie is pawned in a brutal game of cat and mouse.
Can Epsilon save Maggie?
And prevent the most powerful warship in the universe from falling into corrupt hands?
Hands hell-bent on destroying Earth? Find out in Stingray You Can't Hide Forever.
On Amazon.com.
And we're back. It's us from the Legend of the Traveling TARDIS. It's Melanie Dean, it's Mark Muncy, and it's Christian Basil. I didn't give him any adjectives this time.
Nice.
So one question I did have was, so Christian, in the last segment was, did you have that white whale of a toy that you keep trying to find, but you haven't been able to? And if not, was there anything that when you were looking on, that you look on eBay or Amazon or anything that you just haven't found? Is there something that you know of but you just haven't been able to get yet? That's my question.
It would be a literal white whale. I've only seen it. I've seen it recently, Mark said, and I think it's a true connoisseur of all Whovians who are very steep in classic and just have way too much money on their hands. I want the Doctor Who pinball game so badly. Ooh. I want that thing. Yeah, it showed up.
I was saving that for the games episode, but yeah, pretty amazing.
Is there a difference? I mean, games are considered toys, right? So
yeah, that's fine.
That falls into it. Yeah, we'll probably slide into that one, but it's
yeah.
Yeah,
it's fine. It's fine. So that's the one thing that if you had the money, you had the time, and you could locate it. Is that we'll broaden it out to collectible? That's the thing.
And had a space for it and a place so that it could not be heard as much in the house because the dogs would be attacking it left and right when I'm playing it. But I got to play it once over at Tampa Bay Comic-Con, and it was just, I was.
Now there have been two. Was that the one with Capaldi, or is that the old one with the?
That's the old one. I want the classic one. I want the classic one.
$7. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, they've done a new one that has Capaldi and stuff like that in it. I think they actually are working on one with Jodie, but that's Bally or Stern one. I don't remember which, but I know they just did the new Munsters. That's all I was excited about. But I know they've still got the license, and they were talking about updating it again. So, but yeah, the pinball machine's pretty epic. I gotta go with you there. I have my holy grail was getting the Brigadier figure, and I got him.
Yeah.
And then my second was the Commodore 64 Doctor Who game back in the day.
Wow.
Is that Destiny of the Daleks?
I got the disc, and I finally found a box online, but it wasn't original. I was so disappointed. It was from a reprint version. So that's my white whale for collectible wise, but toy wise, I gotta say the one that that I still am chasing is the Master figure from the original line that first came out. I think it was the Anthony Ainsley Master.
Yeah. And I was just going to ask that.
It's just super hard to find for some reason. I mean, he's not that valuable, but nobody's selling. So I think he's really undervalued because I can't find him. And I search for that pretty often. So.
Yeah, for the past, I would say a good 3-4 years, because that's when I started kind of learning about Big Chief. And I mean, my husband and I, we've always collected toys ever since the early 2000s when McFarlane started getting into the toy game. And you start looking at the stuff from McFarlane Toys, and it wasn't Doctor Who at that point, or ever. But a lot of it was things that it didn't look like a toy. It looked like a little sculpture. So they had dragons at first, and then they had all these other, it was like a Wizard of Oz thing that was very, very different and creepy. But that's when they really kind of stepped up the game of toys being miniature sculptures and being miniature, works of art. And where for me, I started looking at toys and looking at likenesses, especially now looking at the Who items and seeing that, yes, you could go someone, now the name escapes my head, but there was one, Gentle Giant. They were the pioneers of doing toys with a 3D scan of either an actor's face. At the time, their big license was with WWE, where they were doing wrestlers, and that was Gentle Giant. I want to say it was Gentle Giant. Now my brain's going, are you sure that's the correct name? So anyone that wants to comment into the podcast below, feel free to correct me. But I've always, as an artist, I've always loved when you can see somebody. An artist, I think, rather than a scan, can capture different nuances of a person. They can capture a character, just like how an actor is an actor. When you see them either at a con or whatever, you can look over and say, yeah, that's Matt Smith. But it's when he gets into character that you go, oh, that's the Doctor. And I think an artist can really capture that when they're sculpting that for a toy, that they're capturing that actor as the character. And so there's a lot of toys that I think like Underground does it really well. Even to a point, I have to admit, even with the Funko toys, and that how they have, if they set the eyebrows just right, it looks like the correct, Doctor. Sometimes.
Whereas the Eagle Moss figures look derpy. They have amazing detail on the costumes, but the faces always look so completely cheesy. And,
because there's times where you could see that it was just a paint app, or they took the time to sculpt and
they're hand painted, and that's the scary thing. It's just
really
they're all hand painted, but like Sleeping Angel, no problem, because look at the detail. It's incredible.
For years,
but there's no paint.
In toy manufacturing, it came down to they would strip the paint from various heads that were generic, and then repaint. On the plastic, so the character it would all come down to the paint job, and the character, your old G.I. Joe may look just like your old Luke Skywalker, which might look just like your old Fourth Doctor, with the paint stripped off, because that's what toy companies used to do.
Was Mego. That was how they. Mego for years was just just the different heads and the different.
Yeah, they just. Stripped the plastic down to its bare bones and then repainted a different face on it, and you weren't supposed to know the difference. And of course, obviously, the more sophisticated the market becomes, the more. Melanie, you hit it earlier. It was really interesting. You had mentioned that what takes a toy and makes it valuable later or more collectible later. And interestingly enough, in the 70s, with Tom Baker's Doctor, a toy company put out a Leela doll.
Yes.
Tom Baker's companion. And it sold incredibly poorly because the majority of young people that were into the Doctor at that time that would be looking at toys were young boys. And they saw the Leela doll as girly. And so they wouldn't buy it. And it was a doll, and they wouldn't buy it. And their moms and dads were okay with that because they were just boys going, I don't want a girly doll. I don't want a Barbie doll. Well, today... that is one of the most valuable dolls. If you can find one, they are 450 pounds a piece.
Wow. I bet a lot of them ended up in landfills or just went to aftermarket.
Today collectors sells them on her site signed, and they're like 1,000 pounds because
today, that was such a low selling item, but today collectors look at that and go, oh my gosh, I can get one that's in, prime condition because nobody played with them back in the day. And so they're very valuable. So you never know what's going to take a toy and make it a collectible over time.
And that's like for me, it's important that if the same thing goes like with comic books, and that you really shouldn't collect toys and comics and stuff like that specifically for the hope, and even baseball cards, sports cards, for the hope that it's going to become an investment. I think the joy of it is that if you have it, you enjoy it, and then eventually if it becomes worth $1 billion, that's great. I think that's then you're like, oh well, I made one hell of an investment. Especially if you look at anybody who's bought Legos for how many eons, and you realize that their market value has gone incredibly high. But like for one point I wanted to make was like my own personal white whale was I like collecting the Big Chief figures. And it's just like one of those things where I love them. I love the way they're sculpted. I love the way that they're produced. I like, everything about them. And my personal white whale was the 4th Doctor figure, and that they make such limited editions that I went to San Diego Comic-Con, I went to New York Comic-Con, I went to SuperCon, I went to DragonCon. I went to all the different conventions. I was on eBay religiously looking for any aftermarket of that toy. I could never find it. So for me, I ended up getting a version of it because Big Chief ended up kind of going through and deciding, you know what, we're going to clear out a lot of our inventory and get rid of a lot of our artists' proofs. So these aren't even actually the toys. This is like proof, and they would even actually label it as proof number 1, proof 2, proof 3. And this is something anybody that's that likes toys, that likes any type of collectible, really. It's just like a car where it's not the factory. This was one of the earlier models of this particular thing before it went to market. And I ended up getting one of those of the 4th Doctor, and he's like just packaged away. He's never coming out of his box. Every time I go into my office and I see the white perfect little sleeve, I just get giddy, knowing what's in there, that I got my little white whale. Before we completely wrap up and go, I will have one question I'm going to pose to everybody. If there was a toy that was a Doctor Who what Doctor Who toy do you wish that they came out with? Kind of like to Garrett's point about Leela, in that they came out with something then nobody wanted. Was there something that you wish that they could come out even now that you really want? Even if it's classic Who, new Who, whatever.
Action figure set.
A
Jago and Lightfoot action figure set. That would be the best thing ever. Just because I would be the only person in the world I think who would buy it. But, no,
what size do you want?
I don't care.
5.5, 12, I don't care.
The only thing I don't like is the Pops. I think the Pops are pretty generic. They all do look the same to me. I used to collect the heck out of them just because I'm like, oh, this is the only way I'm going to get this obscure character. And then I start realizing Funko was securing licenses and not letting anybody else make another one. Okay. So that's when I was like, oh, man, that means nobody's going to make this except for this goofy pop-headed thing. So, but definitely I'll let everybody else answer. But before we go at the end, I think we should all make as much noise with our toys as possible.
That's going to happen.
I'm not pulling out that helicopter thing out. It probably doesn't even work anymore. I don't know.
Or even as a kid, what Doctor Who thing do you wish they would have made? Because that's the bad thing, is thinking back, my cousin played with a lot of Doctor Who stuff, but he had that access of across the pond. Over here, there was no.
I would have liked a remote control Bessie too. I think that would have been cool.
Oh, that would
have to be life size.
I'd like a helicopter one that actually worked. So I was just like, oh, so I can take the conventions go.
So what would you want is a TARDIS drone that maybe has that helicopter that features hidden within it, so that you can actually fly it around a little bit.
I actually was joking one time that I would have a drone where I could put the traveling TARDIS on it. It would have a camera. So it would literally be a traveling TARDIS that would sit on the drone and fly around the convention, taking
pictures so heavy.
And stuff. Yeah, or I get I get the little bobblehead one and stuff like that. Yeah. And I got to agree with Mark. I was just like, the reason why I stayed away from Funkos, because if I knew I bought one, I would have to buy all of them. I would have to get out of them. And a friend of mine, I'll just tell this story real quick. A friend of mine who was a cosplayer, and she knows who she is. She was selling Funkos, and she was selling 2 Funkos that I really, really wanted. Of all the Funkos, it was War Doctor and 12.
Yeah.
And she actually conned me into doing it. She goes, "Yeah, I really need the gas money home." I was like, "Are you really?" So I bought them at a reasonable price. She gave me the 2 for $20, and of course, the next time I go to Michael's. And I find that the 9th Doctor is on sale at Michael's of all places. So I'm like, oh God, I need to stop right here. So yeah, stop making toys where I've got to spend money and blow a month's rent for it. That's about it there.
Beware the Funko walls.
Beware the Funko walls.
The walls, whether it's in a Comic-Con or even in your own personal collection. So this is the end of our show, so I'm going to quickly wrap up. I want to say thank you for listening and letting us chit-chat about toys. Thank you to my panelists, Mark Muncy, and the author extraordinaire, and host extraordinaire, Christian Basil, and the entire Hanging With team. Oh, good Lord. Anyway, thank you so very much once again for listening to us chat about toys. I'm Melanie Dean, and we you're going to hear a whole cacophony of sound of us playing with our toys. And thank you again, once again, for being a part of the legend.